What's the best album of 2020 so far? Gee whiz, let me have a think about it. Has Carly Rae Jepsen released an album this year? Oh, yes she has, dedicated B-side. Ergo, that is the greatest album of 2020. And it is though, because it's all been really hard and difficult and tough and just relentless and miserable and upsetting, and just nothing ever felt like it was ever going to be good again during all of this. And yet here is Carly Rae Jepsen to give us another slew of just unapologetic, joyous, perfectly crafted, sonically brilliant pop music. And I know that, like, I go on about her quite a lot on this channel, and some people even think I'm doing a bit, like, because I like rock music and metal music and all these real music genres that there's no way I actually really vibe off, like Canada's #1 pop princess. And I really do, because it's just nice to have these feelings that are so cliched and so well trodden, because pop music is the hardest genre to write for, because we've all experienced these very basic things, but Carly Rae Jepsen every couple of years finds a new way to express these things that we've always felt. Like in 2015, all the commercially successful music in the world was really slow and sad, and Carly Rae Jepsen was like, okay, cool, I see you having some feelings there. They're true, they're valid, I respect them, but also, have you ever just really liked somebody? Because I've got a song about that, and it's brilliant. And she's done the exact same thing again with dedicated side B, because we're not getting a proper summer this year. We're not going to get out and do all these summer romances and do all these summer things and sit there sipping cocktails while the sun gently comes down, because it's been robbed from us. So instead, she's boiled the perfect summer experience down into one album, and that, my friends, is the album of 2020 so far, Carly Rae Jepsen's dedicated side B.
Okay, so 2020 has been crap across the board, but the one thing that's been helping me keep on is the fact that there's been so much good music released over the past 6 months or so, and I found it incredibly difficult to filter all that through to my one favorite album of the year so far. So I'm going to cheat, because these things are in flux. We will change when we do our end of year list, but right now the two albums I keep going back to are Brave Faces Everyone by Spanish Love Songs and Notes on a Conditional Form by the 1975. The former is one that took me completely by surprise. I hadn't heard of this band until this year, because they were supporting the Menzingers at a gig I was going to, and once I started listening, I couldn't stop, because this latest record in particular is so raw, it's so intense, it has such aggressive kind of emo-y vocals that touch upon subjects that are incredibly relevant for people of my age in such a natural and to the point way that I just can't stop listening to it. And where I've put so many other albums down, that one keeps coming back and I keep finding more in it. But one that probably edges that out slightly is 1975's Notes on a Conditional Form, which, to be honest, couldn't be more opposite to Brave Faces Everyone, because this is an album that I only go to now and again, because it's so long. It's 22 tracks, it's like 120 minutes long, so I rarely listen to it in full, but every single time I do, it feels like an event. It feels like something special, and that's partly because of the diverse array of tracks on this thing. Like, this is apparently the final 1975 record for a long time. You can tell that they poured everything into it. You know, they've thrown in their love of Manchester music, they've got house influences there, they've got 80s synth pop, they've got the emo stuff that made them famous to begin with, and they've got all of these different influences, but all of it is quite tight, like, even though it is quite scattershot in the sequencing, which is a little bit of a problem. Like, the songs themselves are all incredibly well constructed, and a part of that is the production, which is probably the best on any of these records. And whether you're down to listen to you know, one of the singles, I think that Frail State of Mind is probably the most 2020 song ever, which is kind of weird considering it actually released as a single in 2019, but for me that sums up my headspace for this whole year, and I keep going to that one song in particular, but that's just one of many highlights and one of many kind of various different stylistic choices in this album. And I feel like because it's so big, because it's so long, no matter what you like, you'll find a handful of tracks in here that you'll probably love. I fortunately like them all to different degrees, and It's just such a strong send-off, such a strong portfolio, such a strong portfolio that I keep going back to it, keep finding new favorites, and keep appreciating just how much has been put into it and how much emotion, how much kind of craft on the production side. It sounds good. The lyrics are mostly good, you know, the classic 1975 indulgence. It's just good stuff. It's good stuff. Yep, it's so good. I can't even get my words out. Stiffies.
So, album of the year so far, it's usually a pretty complicated question and it's usually one I have to think about quite a lot, but this year it was quite cut and dry. It was a relatively straightforward choice. Listened to a lot of great music this year, but the thing that stands out the most is this bad lad on this t-shirt here that I'm a bit too fat to wear at the moment because lockdown makes you eat lots of donuts and drink lots of beer and not do any exercise. It's Run the Jewels 4, is what I'm trying to say. Now, I could sit here and just talk about the quality of the album. It's exceptional. It's maybe like, you know, at minimum their second best record. As soon as Yankee and the Brave and Ooh La La came out, I knew straight away that this was gonna absolutely slap the doors off. It blew my wig off several times to the point where it no longer fits. But the real reason I think this is the album of the year, and you can make a case for this being the objective album of the year on this grounds, is that the world at the moment is a dumpster fire, right? The news cycle is relentless. It's one crazy thing after another. It's a constant downpressing of despair on you wherever you are. It's a tough place to be at the moment. And at the time this came out, it was in June. It was while certain social tensions were really pushed to the forefront. Obviously, the ongoing global health crisis is a thing, and it was just the ultimate release. You've got Killer Mike on this thing on tracks like Walking in the Snow, spitting verses he could have recorded, you know, like 24 hours before this thing came out, but it was all laid down like 6 months ago, 7 months ago or whatever. And for it to fit the mood so perfectly is just kind of, it's perfect, really. It's the soundtrack of the dumpster fire that is this year, because it'll not only sit up and make you pay attention and slap you in the face and go, hey, you gotta focus on this stuff, but don't focus on it too much because that will really get you down. So we're gonna give you some nice beats you can bop along to as well. This thing will put us pep in your step. It'll make you swagger down the street like a big ridiculous human being if you've got it on in your headphones. Trust me, I've had many awkward looks in public listening to this damn thing. There's a Gang of Four sample on this that is just one of the craziest flips of LP's career, and that tells you something. And of course, the rapping is absurd. It's two guys with outstanding chemistry, back and forth, bouncing off each other. They got something to say, but they're having a damn good time while they're getting angry. That's always been the power of this group. This album maybe encapsulates that better than most. Is it their best album? It's up there with two. For me, it's a coin flip depending on how I'm feeling at the moment, but absolutely, no question, the album of the year 2020 so far.
If we're talking albums of 2020, and if we were ranking by stuff I've listened to the most, it would just be the Tekken soundtracks, to be honest. My album of the year is the Tekken Tag Tournament soundtrack by Nobuyushi Seno, who went on to do a whole bunch of solo stuff, but none of it was from 2020. I just heartily recommend that music because now it's all on Spotify. Tekken 3 soundtrack, Tekken Tag soundtrack, and everything by Nobuyushi Seno, including his solo work and the album Brightness, all absolutely phenomenal. But if we're gonna do 2020 stuff that actually released this year, I want to give a few shout outs. So I noted some stuff down in the synthwave bracket. Absolutely phenomenal albums from Lukash, which is spelled Lukhash. Weird name, but they're brilliant. Transient Offworld by them is great. Daniel Deluxe's newest one is called Exile. That's just more of that sort of really grimy, cyberpunky music that he does, where it feels like some android revolution is happening right around the corner in some dark, dank back alley. And it's just about to sort of like bubble up under the surface. I adore Daniel Deluxe's whole feel. That guy is incredible. Dance with the Dead, one of my absolutely favorite bands. Didn't do any albums this year. Love to Death is still for me their best work. That's from like 2018 or whatever, but they did put an EP out called Blackout that I would recommend. The top two though go to Trivium's What the Dead Men Say and Bury Tomorrow's Cannibal. I'm gonna go number one spot is Bury Tomorrow. I love where Trivium are at right now. I think Trivium are just incredibly confident. They've been through so many weird styles over the years, Matt Heafy and the rest of them, just trying to get down what Trivium even is these days.
days? Is it screamy as hell? Is it more melodic? You know, is it more sort of Matt Heafy doing more vocally led tracks like he did on Sounds in the Snow? What the Dead Men Say brings everything together, and as much as, you know, something like Sickness Unto You is still kind of like a weird sugary kind of song at the beginning, that whole album is so confident overall, and something like The Defiant is just the biggest track that they've done. I almost swore there. Massive song that they've done, rolling together everything. So I totally recommend Trivium's. Bury Tomorrow though, Cannibal, oh my god, like you don't get that many bands that are so proficient in big projection heavy screamy vocals and also melodic stuff spread across multiple vocalists that can like give so many dynamics to each track. For me with Bury Tomorrow, I always kind of struggled with them when they first came on the scene because I thought that it was just too guttural and too retchy, and I just didn't get them. And then Black Flame came along 2 or 3 years ago, which is the one where they really pushed into more sort of cleaner territory, and they started writing songs that had that sort of patented metalcore screamy verse, massive huge anthemic chorus, and as soon as they did that's my bread and butter, so I immediately came in. Cannibal is kind of more of that approach, but again sort of tapping back into their old you know, metalcore faster roots. It's just such an incredible body of work. It's so powerful. Shout outs to the opening track Choke. That thing's going to be humongous live. Also massive shout outs to Imposter. I love that song's chorus. Gods and Machines, Voice and Truth, and Dark Infinite are just all just huge, just proficient, meticulously crafted metalcore. If you want something that's like grittier and heavier but still comes in with, you know, that sort of melody that elevates the whole track when it gets to the chorus or different parts of the breakdowns, go with Bury Tomorrow. Their newest one is absolutely phenomenal, and just like I said, it's peak perfect metalcore.
So this year, I really wanted to broaden my horizons in terms of which musical artists, which musical genres I'll listen to, because I want to understand all this music that I'm missing out on, because there's only so many times you can listen to the Beatles' back catalogue and then realise that they're not bringing out any new stuff. So I'm just trying to broaden my horizon. But my main 4, I would say, albums of this year, which have really stuck out for me, are Slow Rush by Tame Impala, 3:15:20 by Childish Gambino, which is a really good album, and then you've got, I'd say probably my favourite 2 of the bunch is the posthumous album Circles by Mac Miller, which I'm not going to put it into a genre because I'm probably going to say the wrong one, so I'm going to say it's an emo rap hip hop album. I'm probably wrong, correct me in the comments, but still, Circles by Mac Miller is an absolutely outstanding album. I've never really particularly been a fan of the genre or artists similar to him in the past until I listened to him and I was like, yeah, I need to listen to more of this, and it's obviously a real shame what happened to him, but the album that he's left behind and obviously his back catalogue as well are really good. And on this Circles album you've got Good News, you've got Blue World, you've got Circles itself. Is really nice, and I really do recommend it for you to have a check out. And similarly, another artist that I'd never thought I'd listen to until this year was an artist called Dua Lipa. Now that album of hers, Future Nostalgia, is unbelievably good. It's strange because I hear it on the radio all the time. Working from home, that's all you hear on the radio is this Dua Lipa girl. So I was like, you know what, I'll check it out. And it's like funk and disco, and it's really heavy on the bass tones, and every single song is different from the last, and they're all memorable and they're all catchy. And like, she's done a really good job, and I'm so happy that she's putting these heavy bass songs into mainstream pop songs, because there's always room for more bass, in my opinion, being a bass player. So I'm going to say Future Nostalgia, Slow Rush, 3:15:20, and Circles. And also, if we're going to go a bit further and say what's my favourite song of the year, it has got to be, now I'm going to have to look at this to get the name right, and it's Dave Fryu, I think, the Icelandic Eurovision song entry person who sung that Think About Things with the dancing, where it's so cool, and that's also funky and heavy on the bass. So check them out. I'll leave them all in that Spotify playlist down below. Have a listen. I'm sure you'll all enjoy them.